Brought to you by bedroombattlefields.com, this is the Tabletop Miniature Hobby Podcast. On this episode, we'll hear Jason's report on Bring Out Your Lead 2023, and we'll hear from Mark, who wants your opinion on potential hobby event opportunities in 2024. Mark and a few others in the Discord are doing a bit of research at the moment, and you could have your say by going to bedroombattlefields.com/event. First up though, let's hear from Jason. I was going to call it Get Out Your Lead there. It's a completely different event, isn't it?
A little bit, especially when you're chatting about what colour your lead is.
So when you went to Bring Out Your Lead, not Get Out Your Lead, had you had that planned for like a number of months then that you were going to actually go to it? Yeah.
Me and a mate wanted to visit there just to see what it was about. And we emailed that organiser, Garth, you've had him on.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, you're welcome just to come and have a wander in and have a walk around and bother people. So that was fine. And this we did. And we went on the Sunday, which is the last day of the event. And incredibly open. You wouldn't even think there was an event there because it's just the big manor hall in the area. And it was really lovely. Lovely event. And incredibly kind and open of the owners, the Ansells, to do that. Because they really did leave the place to be just swamped by our kind of people. And it was really entertaining. But, I mean, what would you like to know then? So just my general experience of it, what we saw?
Yeah, so talk me through upon arrival then. What are we kind of looking at when we get there? Like, did you drive there? And let's get out the car with you.
I turned up in my big silver beaten up van.
Good.
And we get out at the hall, and they've got a giant brick retaining wall around the estate. So you park up next to that with loads of other cars, wondering if you've come to the right place. But then you see a few heavy-set chaps with neck beards and ponytails and a few Warhammer T-shirts. And you think, yep, there's not many other places that would be like this, is there? So we'll follow the crowds in, and you go underneath the old abandoned Victorian architecture of all of the train, in the countryside, there's loads of abandoned train stations and train networks that just aren't there anymore in the UK, and they look really eerie and fallen down. Well, there's that you can walk through, so that sets a good, interesting scene to the whole thing. And then you walk through into his coach yards, which is where Foundry Games is. So they've got some of their casting facilities and some of the sheds. They've also got the shop, which was open on the day. So you walk through the big Victorian coach house gates, and you're in the courtyard where all the marquees are, the big tents and some other little tents where tables are set up and there's loads of people milling about. We naturally gravitated over to the shop on the right because there's loads of blister packs as well as tables and a bit more frenetic energy in there. And we just went, all right, we'll go in there then and have a look. And as soon as you go in the shop, it is something back from the 90s because there's just wall to wall of blister packs of metal minis. There is no plastics, there is no fancy devil's vomit plastic covered boxes or anything like that. It's just wall to wall minis for you to look at. You don't know where to look. Thousands of the things. You start going through them because us being us, we ended up not interested in the people at that point. We were interested in the racks of minis in front of us. Just went straight over to them, and all of them, historical or not, would fit in the old school old hammer vein. And there are some, because I think they've got a sister company called Warmonger Minis, something like that. And they've got all of these gorgeous metals that are good for your chaos, your fawns, your heroes, your dwarfs, your orcs and goblins. And there are some amazing orcs and goblins in there, some good sculpts, Kev Adams and stuff that aren't from the original 90s lot. But some are reprints, some are new. And they will fit straight into that 90s aesthetic. And you can buy them on the day because they prioritise all the things that would work with Oldhammer in the shop that day. So that you could, mixture with, you could sell more, obviously, with the spirit of the event, but it made a great little addition. But in and amongst all those racks are some display cabinets from, I think, Brian Ansell's personal collection. And they are gorgeous. There is plenty of hundreds of thousands of pounds of miniatures just on display. I would have thought, and they're painted to the top quality. And some of them are true nostalgia pieces. Many of them were all over the old White Dwarfs. And like Brian Ansell's personal Chaos Army is in there. The original metal prototypes for Hero Quest and Space Crusade are in there, painted beautifully. I mean, you get close, and the old White Dwarfs didn't actually do them justice. They are brighter than you think than I think in what I saw in the dwarfs, and the clarity and detail on them is finer than I expected. And there's loads of Space Marines, all Rogue Trader era, loads of Chaos, and an absolute ton of historicals. And the thing that struck me about all these display pieces was just how bright and clear and bold the color choices were. There were heavier contrast between the base layer and top layer than you would think in terms of color tone. I think it's tone, lighter or darker. And the placement is key on those things, but there's often only two colors, and they're brighter colors than you would think, but it really works. Now, I'm guilty as hell of just going down the grim dark, let's make it grungy look. I did that with all my miniatures, but this has completely convinced me to be brighter in many of the aspects of things. And that's just in the shop. I haven't even gone into the games yet. But whilst we were in there, people are so open and chatty that people are just chatting to each other. And people would tap me on the shoulder, go, "Hey, how you doing? What you got there? What are you looking into?" And one chap, shout out to Michael here, just a chap I met, introduced himself, I introduced ourselves, and he said, "Can I show you my miniatures?" And he went into his rucksack and pulled out some of the most amazingly painted Chaos that I've ever seen. And they're proper 1990s era Chaos. And we were chatting for 20 odd minutes. And this is the spirit of the event. People were just talking about the stuff they love and just sharing and open. And that's how it went through all the time. Every table you came to, people would stop and talk, chat, offered for you to join in if they had space. And you could just spend hours just going around looking at the amazing miniatures on side. Loads of different games, not just Oldhammer. And the spirit of the event seemed to be the driving force behind the thing, from what we could tell. And there was just things to ogle at. They were playing a lot of narrative games on there, a lot of Rogue Trader, some More Teams, some Warhammer, Dark Future was there, and loads of esoteric games as well, some Space Hulk. And they were all being played quite differently to what you would expect. And there was no tournament style play at all. The Ansells were wandering around, some of the younger Ansells. I didn't manage to talk to them in the end because they seemed very busy. But one of the level of painting as well at the tables was quite varied, and it really gave you an indication of you don't need to go excellent to have a fantastic game and to have it look fantastic. Because if you really go excellent on your quality, you have to have it in a cabinet and be 6 inches from it to get the appreciation of it. Yeah, it still looks amazing, obviously, when you go top notch. But a truly brilliant event. And we went on the quieter day because people were reporting to me that the previous day was 3 times the amount of people, perhaps at least double the amount of people that we had there. And there was some famous faces, unfortunately not yours. But you should be there, I think. But have you ever heard of Eric's Hobby Workshop on YouTube and stuff like that?
Yeah, familiar with the name, yeah.
Well, that chappie had flown over by the look of things.
Crikey.
And he was there. And there was a load of other people as well, but I didn't see them. This was the previous day. But John Blanche and a few other famous faces were all there. They were joining in games and having a chat. The famous face that I have to admit that I missed on the Sunday, who was there, was, well, I'll tell you the whole thing. We were just walking around and we saw this old boy sat in a corner in his 1970s leathers, massive beard, and a big leather Australian hat, wide-brimmed thing. And he had a load of Tesco carrier bags under the table at his feet. And, me and my mate, being the prejudiced people we are, just thought, oh, look, the old boy's wandered in, might be want some food, wherever we'll even be, chatting away. And then loads of people kept going to him through the day, we noticed. We thought, that's kind, that's interesting. And on the way out, someone told us, have you managed to have a talk to Tony Ackland, famous artist? What? What are you talking about, Tony? Well, that old boy over there, that's Tony Ackland. I just didn't go near him. But it turns out in those Tesco's carrier bags, or whatever they were, was piles and piles and piles of his art folios showing original artwork from all the days of the Realms of Chaos, all the old White Dwarfs, all the old rule books, and everything else. And he was just sat there waiting for people to talk to him.
Brilliant.
Yeah, really open and nice. And so it only takes an idiot like me to pass over him, doesn't it?
Or to chuck 50 pence in his hat.
I felt awful. But, that was the image he went for nonetheless. There's just tons of stuff there, man.
So when you're walking around then, you're saying there's loads of different games going on, and were you just having a good look at like the miniatures and the terrain and that was on display? Did anything really jump out to you?
Nearly every table, because every table had something slightly different going on. It's people's individual collections, so that created interest in of itself, because not being tournament, they were so varied in what they had on show. And so you didn't see the same Blood Angels army every single time, because it's not tournament based at all. And it was just so interesting and granular. And people had painted them with such care and with such narrative behind it. Every single Warhammer table was something completely different. And every army was completely different and being played in a different style. So one of them, in fact, was the Crown of Command bods, or the European lads. And I think one introduced himself as Marcel, which I think is one of the major names in the Crown of Command, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he was there just open. He just said, "Oh, you come to have a look. Yeah, come over here then. Yeah, so we're doing this. We're just a load of guys on Discord that made mates, and now we're playing this." And he had a self-printed book of all those marvelous fanzine White Dwarfs with him that he was just showing people. And so we had a good look through that and just having a chat with them, see how that was going, what they were up to, and the type of game they were playing. Really fun stuff, really open, and really varied, which means you could just spend at least 20, 30 minutes bothering people on each table, and they don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
That's the nice thing. You don't get the sense that you're bothering them.
Yeah, stopping me winning the tournament.
Yeah. Or indeed just the sense of, this is my table, bog off, would you?
Yeah, yeah.
I know you're chatty, but we're quite introverted and we came here to play, not to talk to you, yeah?
Yeah.
But none of that at all.
So you're saying like the crowd was basically about 3 times the amount on the Saturday. How many would you put it as on the Sunday?
Around 12 tables of varying sizes, approximately 30 people on average, maybe a bit more.
Yeah.
But that was only within, because we were only there for 2 or 3 hours at first, came back for another hour when we had a walk and everything else. So it wasn't long that we were there, because we didn't want to, although people said, "Oh, you're welcome to join in," it would have been squeezing us in, and it might have detracted from their games. We could see that because they were quite full already.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to impose too much. And we also wanted to go and have a look at some of the other things in Nottingham Central, because we live 5 hours from it driving, so we just wanted 3 hours from it driving, even though it took 5 hours. But so we wanted to go some other stuff in the Nottingham and the Lead Belt, search the Lead Belt. But next time, I'm utterly convinced that if Garth will let me, I'd like to book a table of some kind and just spend the whole day there. Because it was better than Nottingham in the end, because everything that you wanted from Nottingham was there, plus all the enthusiastic people. No one trying to sell you something, no one trying to push something you don't want under your nose. None of that. It was everything you wanted in one place, and better. Just spend the whole day there and have a game. Be a great idea. But you could go, because they had tables in 4 of the different buildings and outside in 2 of the tents. So you get so you can go outside and get some fresh air and a lot of light as well. You're not just in the the dingy dungeon area. But everyone was so open. So you go over to the Space Hulk lot, and they're more than happy to chat your ear off about what's going on with their Space Hulk, their personal collections, their lovely, almost diorama level of tunnels that they've made just for this mission. And then you go on to the next room, and they're playing More Time, but a different variation of More Time. And they've made these awesome terrain pieces out of balsa wood and sticks that look quite a ramshackle, dystopian sort of like a strange village in the middle of some mountains, and they're using that as a Mordheim setting, and just lavish of love and attention on these things.
Did I hear somebody saying that was the last year it was going to be at the Foundry?
Yes, so we overheard that walking around, and obviously we thought, oh, we've missed out for 10 years and now it's over. Oh, hell, brilliant. Well done, Jason. That's a tick in the box of things accomplished there, isn't it? Maybe you're a jinx. But no, they said it's going to continue, but at a new location. So my understanding of the situation, which is by no means canon or authorised at all, it's just hearsay amongst all the people at the event, was the Ansels are selling up the estate, so Foundry has to move premises. The new premises, once they've established it, they'll figure out how they can run the event again in the new location and continue as we currently are. So you might not have the lovely Victorian stuff, but it will be the spirit and the event itself, which is 95% of everything, I'd say, will continue next year, which I would love to join.
I'd imagine it will be in the same postcode-ish area then. Like
everything seems to be in Nottingham.
Yeah, aye. It seems to be the centre of it all. Always has been, so
it's strange that, isn't it? I don't know why Nottingham was just like, okay, that's the place we're going to do for student hen do's and miniatures. That's what's going to happen.
First £1 million footballer.
Oh yeah,
Nottingham. Yeah, aye, Francis.
Okay, well, you're on thin ice with me in football, I'm afraid. I have no idea.
Right, back to miniatures and knocking walls down. Did they ask you to knock any walls down? I suppose if they're selling the place, they're not really looking for that, are they? No,
I didn't actually introduce anyone to what I did. We were talking so much about the hobby, there was nothing else to explain. Which in a way is a kind of weight off your shoulders, because there's just no expectation of you. There's nothing to talk about other than just the joy of the hobby and its complete escape. And that seems to be what everyone was treating it as, just a celebration of something they like with people that are in a similar vein to them.
So you didn't bring miniatures or that then? You just brought yourself?
No, not this time. Just myself. We kept it simple because we didn't know what to expect. And we also had other things we wanted to do on the day to make the most of the day from our point of view, which in hindsight was the wrong thing to do because everything we wanted was at this event.
Yeah. Oh, well, you live and learn. So if you were wanting to run a table or take miniatures or play games next year, how would you ideally see that working?
Depending on the scope of why we're doing it, if it's just me and my pal, then I try and book a small table in a dusty corner and we'll play a game over 4 or 5 hours that other people can join in or something like that. And then we can just take turns going around and have a look around the other tables and the other people can do the same. But if it's a meeting point for, say, our Discord as well as a game for my mate, I would try and book a bigger table. And then one, maybe two of us would take responsibility for actually coordinating and setting up what that game is. Then others can then just turn up. They don't have to bring miniatures, they can turn up. Stuff will be there ready if they want to join in. And that way we can just have a rolling thing of, okay, we only need 2 people to be running this, or 1 when we're actually playing, and everyone else can drop in and out when they want, so they can go wandering around the event, talk to each other, have a nonsense, have a drink, whatever, and just drop in and out of the game as it's going. But that's all dependent upon what table you can book on what day, because the larger tables often, from what Garth told me, are reserved for people that are long-standing supporters of the event and have proven their conduct and everything else, and they just deserve it over people like me who they don't know from Adam. So we might have a restriction on the size of the table just for that purpose. Also, the premiere day does seem to be the Saturday. So that would be the hardest to get any kind of table, I would have thought. Because from their website, the Saturday seemed to have been completely booked out. There were some bookings left on the Friday, and there were slightly more some bookings left on the Sunday. But all down to what table you can book, what day, and who you want to accommodate for coming there.
Yeah, I'm kicking myself for not being able to go, because I remember this time last year, after last year's event had just finished, and I was like, it sounds really good, definitely going next year. And then I've had too much on this year and I couldn't go, and now I'm like, I'm definitely going next year. So I need to make sure I make it this time, because
I was in exactly the same position as you, and the only way I made it happen is I just put it in the diary when I said it. And I had a mate that was relying on me as well, because he said, "Oh, okay, well, I'll book that time. I'll make sure that window is open for me as well," and that way it just happens.
Yeah.
So if we had a Discord event, that might increase the chance of it happening for you.
Yeah, definitely. Did you get a word with like John Blanche or that when you were there?
He wasn't there. He was there on the Saturday.
Oh, he came on the Saturday.
So I learned the scale of my mistake on Sunday. That was there was all of the famous people as the previous 2 days, apart from poor Tony Ackland, who I looked over because I'm a snob apparently.
Aye, there's always next year though. You'll know, and unless he totally reinvents himself again, then you just keep.
Yes, and I will have more time, and I will be less ignorant of what the actual artists' faces look like, because I'm now going to research what the artists' faces look like.
Yeah.
So
did you get a word with Garth on how, or anyone else that was talking about how this event was when compared to recent years? I know we've got the whole COVID thing that blew a hole in it, but you know, if we chuck that out and just look at previous normal years, how did this kind of stack up?
I didn't talk to Garth other than on email, because this was all of the things I told you about Garth was on email exchange before the event. The chaps that I was talking to were just other event goers like me, like Michael, that nice chap, and Michael's sense was that it's just something that's become slightly bigger each year, slightly more fun each year because more people are aware of it, and that the sense of camaraderie and the sense of joy over just celebrating the hobby hasn't lessened, it's just increased with it, because people have kept it cheap, cheerful, in the same spirit. They haven't tried to capitalize on it, commercialize on it, try to make private sellers come in and sell their wares. I know Garth didn't like that anyway. It said on the website, doesn't it, that they don't encourage you to buy and sell second-hand minis, because they're being such a kind thing from the Ansells that will favour their wares, and the rest is just discouraged entirely. On site, and it just makes such a nice feel to an event. It's a rare thing actually to go to an event where someone's not trying to take something out of your pocket.
Yeah,
the true focus is what the people and the celebration of what they're doing.
Yeah.
But the sense was that this should not stop. And it's got plenty of momentum and plenty of support to continue.
Yeah.
Which I found surprising, because I thought it'd be a very niche, weird little thing. You can't help but bring your own prejudices of what it might be like.
Yeah.
I was completely wrong. We saw every representation of the age demographic, quite a few females, and we saw a lot of families as well, of multiple generations in the same family coming to enjoy it. It's just great. It's lovely to see that there is next generations coming up, and a lot of these new YouTubers aren't that old. They're only in their 30s.
Yeah,
and some of them even younger. And they're coming to this thing, which I'd say probably gives evidence to the fact that the games aren't just appealing to our nostalgia, which I always thought it was. I thought the new games would be better, non-stop better. And I'm just a nostalgia freak because it was my childhood, but it can't be. It can't solely be that, given the types of people that are going there, are the various, and across the world as well. I mean, this Eric fella and his mates flew in from America for this event, and they're young, and they're quite young people. So it can't just be nostalgia. It's got to be something intrinsic about that time period, the attitude, the flavour, and the attitude of people selling it to their younger selves, the younger people around them. that's got to make it more enduring for a reason, right? I don't quite know why. And nostalgia is certainly a massive part of it, isn't it? But this event proved to me that there's something intrinsically good about a lot of these older games and a lot of the styles of play. Because Frostgrave was there as well. That was represented. So there is a style and flavour of game that seems to be more stable over time.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I'm reading too much into it, but
no, I mean, I suppose it's kind of a different thing, but like you get folk that are like 14, 15 that are into the Stone Roses and Oasis, and they weren't around when they were big, you know, but they like them. You'll get folk our age that like the Beatles, you know. We didn't grow up with them, but
quite right. I'm just thinking a lot of my bands that I'm into actually are from the decade or two before my actual time.
Yeah. So maybe it's the same with games. There's just a quality, a lasting quality that shines through. Because the modern stuff, even if you are young, won't necessarily appeal to you.
Well, there's some that do just miss the mark, don't they? They go out and make a big splash for a few seconds, and everyone leaves it alone. I know quite a few games, even from the big behemoth itself, that have just come out, a load of hype, and then nothing happens with it for some reason.
Yeah,
I'm not smart enough to know why, but
and I mean the relaxed attitude and approach of this corner of the hobby will appeal to people. I am signed up to Games Workshop's email just purely out of interest, and I don't open most of them, but sometimes I'll open it and it's just new thing, and it's always been like that. You know, the White Dwarfs of the 90s were full of new things. So it's not like anything's changed, but after a wee while you're like, I don't need new things. You know, when it comes time for me to add to my army, I will, but it'll be on my own terms rather than because I'm opening an email every week and there's 20 new things to buy. Big thanks to Jason, as always, and now let's hear from Mark as we start to think ahead to 2024. We're kind of doing that Viz thing of replying to a letter in the same edition. This will go over everyone outside of Britain's heads, but in the magazine Viz, which I talk about now and then, you used to get the letterbox page, you probably still do. And when I was younger and reading it, and probably shouldn't have been at that age, I was always fascinated that people would reply to letters from the same editions, not knowing that it was all just made up. So we're going on the back of my chat with Jason on the same episode. So by the magic of audio, you've already heard that, haven't you?
I have, yeah. Time travel device was deployed to me, and it's really interesting what he had to say. And I think him talking about his excellent experience at the Bring Out Your Lead event just sounds very inspiring, and I'm annoyed that I wasn't able to get there, to be honest, because that was something I wanted to do, and I'm sure other people, having heard that episode or seen pictures that people have posted who have been there who didn't get to it, were very jealous because it looks absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I'm really gutted I couldn't make it as well, especially listening back to him talking about it, and I wish I could have got down there, and I'm determined to make something happen. And I always forget the year. 2024 will be next year, won't it? So, it'd be great to do some. So that's kind of the topic of our short chat here, isn't it? That, you know, even before Bring Out Your Lead happened this year, there had been some tentative discussions in our community about potentially doing something as well, hadn't there? Some sort of event.
Yeah, very much. I think one thing that we see as a common thread that people talk about is they talk about how they really, enjoy the aspects of the hobby where you're doing things, painting things or building things and doing things in your own time. But the one thing that people seem to not get enough time to do is get face to face with people and meet new people and play the games and be able to actually socialize. And so actually the idea of doing some kind of a meetup and people having that opportunity has been there sort of burning away in the background the whole time, really. And what we've been talking about a bit in the Discord community is about ways to actually make that happen. And I think that there's loads of opportunities, different ideas. I've met with some people and we've chatted about different things that we could do. And we actually got enough people in the Discord community who wanted to get on board with that and sort of form a bit of a steering committee. So it's about 7 or 8 of us joined together and just chatted about what we thought was possible, what we thought would be beneficial, and on what feasible ideas there are out there. And the conclusion we drew is there's so much choice. We've got a big diverse community of people all across the world. People listening to this podcast, I know you get several hundred downloads, and that's a lot of people who are potentially interested in something. And what we wanted to do is engage with those people and find out what their views were and what sorts of events or activities they might want to engage with.
Mm-hmm. So how advanced are you with this then? I mean, you've kind of put the feelers out and got some folks that were interested in doing the sort of steering committee stuff. So you've had an initial discussion about it now, haven't you, with these folks?
Yeah, that's right. And I think the main thread was that inevitably there's going to be people who can't engage with something because of distance, because of time, because of family commitments and so forth. So although there's loads of appetite and loads of enthusiasm to do something, there's no absolute clear path as to what would be the most preferred option. So we can talk as a small group and say, well, that's what our preferred options are, but they might differ to the next person. Jason's experiences at Bring Out Your Lead suggest that going to something like that would be amazing, but that might not be something that everyone could do. So what we really wanted to do was, take that steering group level and say, okay, let's put together a survey the wider community, all the people who are engaging with the podcast and all the people who are engaging in that. That might be people who are on Discord, people who aren't. It might be people who have just listened to this for the first time because they've found it through Google. I think really what we wanted to do is get that broader picture from as many people as possible to make as informed a decision as we can, take that results back to the steering group, have a look at it, and then come up with a plan that probably hits as many ticks as many of the boxes as it possibly can.
Yeah, I'll put. We'll mention it again later on, but I'll create a link for the survey. They'll be able to get that at bedroombattlefields.com/event, just to keep it nice and simple. And I'll pop that in the show notes too. So, what kind of questions are you going to be asking folks on this survey?
So, there's a couple of ones on there just about, who people are, whereabouts they are located in the world. We've got a question in there that's a checkbox question, so you can say all of the things that you might potentially be interested in. I think some of that also comes from some of the discussions we had as a group about some of the things that we haven't seen at events, and whether or not there would be an appetite for certain activities that you don't necessarily see go on at these things. So quite a wide range of boxes for people to stick as their kind of main key interests. And then the main section follow-up question to that is one all about a sort of level of, you're not making a commitment, you're just expressing an expression of interest at this stage in which types of activities or what types of events you would be more likely or less likely to attend. So we're just really trying to gauge people's availability and the potential for running something, or the potential for piggybacking on an existing event and bringing things together like that. So there's a question in there about Bring Out Your Lead, for example, because that seems to be very much an obvious route that would provide a really good something to pin everything onto. But there's also the scope to say, well, let's do something of our own and something quite grand. So from the smallest online gathering up to the biggest face-to-face gathering, we want to see what it is that people would be most likely to want to do.
Mm-hmm. Can you remember what the question about Bring Out Your Lead is? Is it just, are you planning to go or not? Or?
It's more about, would you like to use that as a kind of community muster point, like a bit of a meetup at that? Because from what Jason was talking about, I know he said that there are people in the Crown of Command community, so Joshua's podcast that he runs out of Japan, and that's got a big global community. So they had people come from all over sort of Western Europe to come to the Bring Out Your Lead event, and they met up as a mini group within that bigger thing. So that was the question about that, is almost using it as a central point to do something. And then if people are already in the area and they're already there for that, then it might be that they're interested in doing something a little bit more as well on top of that. Because I know that group, the Crown of Command group, I think they went off and did some other things. They visited Warhammer World and they did some other things while they were in the area, because it's quite a geographical anomaly that quite a lot of these things that go on and the things that you might want to go and see are all in that Nottinghamshire area. So make the most of it while you're there, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You're saying, like, one of the obvious options is that what happens just happens, that bring out your lead. But would there be any particular reason why that might not be the best option? Would it depend on maybe some of the feedback that you got might point to, like, most people want to do this particular thing and that's not happening there, or something like that?
It might be that, and I think the other thing is with the Bring Out Your Lead event falling in traditionally in the first week of August, then it might just not be appropriate for some people in terms of like when they might have holiday plans or other plans, and it might be something they can't do. I suppose the other thing to consider is the fact that our global community, as it is, might actually have a bias towards being in a country other than the United Kingdom. And it might actually be that, we've got members of the steering group who are in France, in Canada, in America. We've got people from all over. So actually people are contributing towards it, the thought process at this point. But if it turns out that actually, the lion's share of people want to do an event in Australia, then that would make the most logical place to hold something. And I just wouldn't be able to go, which is fine, because I think we're just trying to be sort of respectful of what people can and can't do. I think the other thing, like you say, is potentially the Bring Out Your Lead event is kind of based around a certain style of gaming and a certain nostalgia and a certain older style of gaming. And it might be that we've got more people in the community who are looking for something different to that. So we'll have to wait and see really what the results say. I think the most important thing was not being too presumptuous and just saying, oh, well, a small group of people are going to determine what the thing is going to be for a large number of people, and then being surprised that people don't come en masse. I think we need to go out and talk to people first. The other thing was the case that appears not to be, and certainly hearing Jason talking, was a little unsure as to whether or not the Bring Out Your Lead event was even going to happen again, because I believe that the Foundry company are moving premises, and Brian Ansell, who owns it, is not particularly well, and is older, and what the kind of future of it was. So there was an element of thinking, well, if that wasn't to happen next year, then that might not be a suitable event to congregate around. But it sounds like from what Jason was saying, it's if not guaranteed, then it's certainly planned for next year.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So yeah, like I say, you'll find the survey at bedroombattlefields.com/event, EVENT. I'm just looking at the third question, activities. What type of activities would you like to take part in? So we've got painting and modelling with others. We've got attending painting and modelling tutorials, running a painting or modelling tutorial, taking part in demo games, running a demo game, playing games of your own, playing in a narrative campaign, trying other types of tabletop game, attending seminars with industry experts, Q&A sessions, socialising, that's for me, that'll be my answer, purchasing from traders, meeting authors and designers and having books signed, or visiting War Games Company HQ. So there's loads of variety there, isn't there? So it'll be really interesting to see what kind of comes out of that. Yeah,
I hope so. And I think that the Q&A seminar bit was one that I'd personally be quite interested in seeing whether people are keen on that, because I think that certainly, if you were talking about an established kind of modern games company putting out contemporary releases, whether that's a Mantic Games or a Wardlaw Games or a Games Workshop, then they might hold events where they have seminars and people could go along and attend that, because they're that little bit bigger. But more for the independent games companies or the smaller publishers or older game systems, you perhaps don't really get that kind of thing. But you, in your podcast, have been able to speak to those people and have got some really good insight. So it might be that actually some of your former guests who you've got a relationship with already might be willing to say, yeah, I'll join, even if they're joining in some kind of virtual capacity, and provide a bit of an insight into behind the curtain. Because certainly from my perspective and other people I talk to, I think quite a lot of us are quite interested in the industry behind the hobby as well, and what makes that tick.
Yeah, I mean, a bigger picture question too that I'm just thinking about with events is, the reality of life might mean that events like this are maybe the only opportunity for some folks to actually get a game that they want to play, you know, a way that they want the game to look, and, you know, playing against somebody or with somebody that shares their vision of how they want it to pan out as well. You know, in an ideal world, we get together with somebody every week and we can do this, but we all know that that's not the reality for almost all of us. You know, we've got family stuff, job stuff. So yeah, it could just be the fact that events now, annual events or you know, biannual events are like the best way to kind of achieve that, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so. Just to be able to kind of say, well, I know that that's coming up and I'll be able to do this thing in this way. If you're keen on playing one of the main played games, you can probably just look up and find your local games club or game shop and go along on a Wednesday night and get a game of that in the sort of traditionally played style and so forth. But it's going to be far more difficult if you're wanting to do something that's very particular or very unique. Whereas actually going to an event where you say, well, we're going to run this and it's going to be done this way and people can come along and this is the point of it, people will get on board with it, hopefully in a slightly more, it's an opportunity to have that sort of, you know, there might not be very many of us, but when you bring it all together, there's probably quite a few people and it'd be enough. But you know, the distances between people mean that you need that kind of, that event, that focal point to bring it all together and make it worth doing.
Cool. Is there anything else you think we should touch on before we point to that survey link again?
Not specifically. The only thing I would say is do fill it in, even if it's something that even if you're going to say that you probably won't attend to all of the different types of events, because I think that the more data we can get and the more responses we can get are really important, because then we know we're making an informed decision. If we were going to make a decision based on only a handful of people's views, then it could easily be quite skewed and not actually reflect what people want. So even if you can't come, but you would be interested in responding and saying what type of event that you would like to see, if you were able to, then please jump on it and fill it in. You don't have to give any information beyond what you might want to. There is an opportunity to leave your email address on there if you wish to. The data is not going to be used for anything other than just responses to this, but it just allows a sort of small mailing list to be put together so that people can be corresponded with about what any plans might be happening. So yeah, as many responses as possible is probably the one thing that we're really looking for.
Mark's going to add everyone to his Bitcoin mailing list and
that's it, yeah.
Regular updates on there. Do you remember the link? Have I done my job properly?
Yeah, perfect. Event,
that's it. bedroombattlefields.com/event. Cool. Yeah, I'll be filling it in straight away, and cool. Encourage everyone else to do the same. Thanks very much for listening to this episode of the Tabletop Miniature Hobby Podcast. If you enjoy the show, then please do share it with someone else you think might enjoy it too. And be sure to check out our Discord community of like-minded hobbyists, which you could find at bedroombattlefields.com/Discord. It'd be great to see you in there.